questions and some concerns with that. So what I want to keep in front of council is the first of the year that we make it a priority to revisit the dumpster ordinance. We've had some residents that have apartment complexes in town that have room for a dumpster, but unfortunately they're not allowed to put a dumpster there because of the way the ordinance reads, present zoning. So I think it is in the best interest of the city to sit down. It could be a committee formed by myself, code enforcement officer, public works department, maybe a few folks from council, and we revisit the dumpster ordinance and see if it still makes sense.
More common sense.
Yeah, see if it still, is adjusted. Next, just briefly, Diamond Street Park. There's been a lot of work was done last week at the Diamond Street Park. If you notice, a lot of equipment's gone now. We got a lot of fresh dirt down, sidewalk and cement is done, concrete work's done. The next step is putting the square grass sod. My understanding is coming from Philadelphia. I'm not sure when it's going to get here, but their hope is soon, and we can get that down. It'll definitely come to life there when you see the grass. It's been fixed with the color of the grass. So, and then they will be finishing up in the early spring with lighting at the park. And also to let council know, we just were informed of a local grant that's become available through Crawford Heritage over in Meadville. It's a grant that the city can apply for to get some of the amenities at the park, whether it's trash cans, park benches, things like that. Something we're going to apply for. As council recalls, we had to cut a lot of things out of the park due to the cost of the park, and a lot of those things were park benches and trash cans. So we're excited to be able to apply for that. We're going to be doing that by tomorrow. So we need to get that in by Wednesday. Next, just briefly about the ambulance delivery. This past week, we had the delivery of our new used ambulance. We call it new, but it's used. That the city will be utilizing out of our fire department after the first of the year. This is obviously the first step as we move forward with running an ambulance out of the city and fire department. The city is very excited to be able to offer our residents basic life support care and transport to the hospital when our primary EMS provider is unavailable for transport. Again, that was delivered last week. The next step is for it to get called stripped down and with new lettering in Titusville, fire department on the side. Obviously working out all the other things we need to work out to get the ambulance rolling into the new year. Next, I'd like to talk about an incident that happened last week here in the city where an individual had decided to defecate in one of our city lots. If you didn't know, this is against the law, as I'm sure council is aware, some of the public may not be aware. This individual decided to do this in an open lot near an elementary school and multiple businesses in town. This act was caught on camera and turned over to the police that same day. Our city PD in turn posted a picture of this individual's face on social media asking help to identify who this individual was. Many times, our police department, when a crime is committed, goes to social media when it can't identify somebody, puts their picture out there, certainly not to embarrass them, but to find out who they are. And we see, many times the public responds quickly with they know who it is and we're able to contact that person. Our city, as I said, our city PD did not post this individual's face to embarrass them or make a joke out of the situation. It was posted, one, because a crime was committed, and two, we were trying to make identity of this person that committed the crime. And also, I think it's important for the public to know that our PD doesn't always automatically charge someone when there's different circumstances to the case. We're obviously trying to find out the state of mind of this individual as well. Again, we had several folks that had responded to the city posting that, the police department posting on the website, very upset that the police department posted somebody's picture in a case like that. Again, as I said, it's against the law, first of all, to do that, the location of where it was, and again, it was just to get the identity of the person. Quickly, we were able to gather some information from the community that identified that individual who was from out of town. That individual was contacted, and the police department are working with them right now. As far as charges go, no charges have been filed at this time, but they're certainly going to be speaking with this individual and handling that case. So I think it's important that council and the public know as well. Again, it wasn't put on there to embarrass an individual, it was to identify this person. And lastly, council, I just want to remind you our first meeting in January is scheduled for January 2nd. It's actually a holiday, so it needs to be changed. My recommendation to council was to moving up from January 2nd to January 3rd, following day.
Tuesday.
Which would be Tuesday. We talked about having all our meetings, which has been kind of a change, obviously, in the month of December, but This would make it Tuesday with the first meeting in January, and then things should go back to Monday.
What time's that?
Whatever
Are you
council
okay?
decides.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay with that?
Okay. And I do apologize, I have one more item. Our current fire chief's contract, as council aware, expires at the end of this month. Previously, our fire chief had a 5-year contract with previous administration, and as I said, as it expired this month, I've had several opportunities to sit down with the fire chief and negotiate a new contract. 2 offers were made to the chief, and unfortunately, he's elected to retire after 24 years of service with the city of Titusville, and that retirement will be effective January 1st, 2023. Joe has done a fantastic job as a fireman and chief leading our fire department, and I wish him nothing but the best in this next chapter of his life. I do ask council that we look into recognizing Joe after his official retirement, January 1st, at one of the council
At
meetings.
our January 3rd meeting?
Yes.
I think that would be wonderful.
Council, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for a very thorough manager's report. I would just like to say, I was out of town at the time of the incident, and I thank our police department for using whatever means necessary to identify someone that in that close proximity to a school, where children could have seen that, and taking care of them. My hat's off to our police department for a job well done and quickly. Thank you for clarifying everything for us. And as far as this other goes, I know we're going to honor Joe first meeting, but I can just say with my 3 years in council, it's been a pleasure working with him to see how he motivates our fire department, how well meticulous they keep the place up there, and how even before we got here, how they were able to secure the ladder, this current ladder truck that we have, and then work with previous administration to get the roof lifted so we could keep it right there, because there was a talk at one point in time of keeping it somewhere else. It's nice that they're able to keep it right there. And if you talk to anyone, we have no minutes of boards and authorities tonight. Council committee updates. Does anybody have any updates on the committees they are part of? I think our airport advisory board meeting is next Wednesday. Okay, at this time we open it up for public participation pertaining to our agenda items. 5-minute time limit per individual speaker. Just let us know whether you're from town, a resident, non-resident, or what your connection is to the town. Our old business tonight will be the second reading of our bill number 6 is our tax rates. Bill number 7, which is the budget. Presentation of a trail update by guest speaker Ron Steffi. And then our new business tonight will be Resolution 13 of 2022, amending certain employee policies, which we'll talk about at that time. Would anybody like to speak on agenda items? Okay, if that's not the case, then we will move into our old business, which is the second reading of Council Bill number 4. Go ahead.
Number 6.
Yep.
Did I say 4?
Yeah, that's why
That's no glasses. No glasses. Sorry, I'll do it again. Second reading of Council Bill number 6.
Thanks, Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Titusville, Crawford County, Pennsylvania, fixing the real property tax rate for all city purposes for the year 2023 at 26.713 mils on buildings and 71.25 mils on land. Also delineating, right, Heather?
Yes.
That portion of the real property tax be used for recreational purposes, for pension recovery purposes, for library purposes, and for shade tree purposes for the calendar and fiscal year 2023. Again, Council, in a nutshell, no tax increase.
Okay. Any discussion, or somebody like to make a motion? Any discussion from junior council? Okay.
I'll make a motion we accept the second reading of Council Bill number 6.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Logston?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mr. Koval?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes. Next, we have our second reading of Council Bill number 7, our 2023 budget.
Yes, council, an ordinance of the city of Titusville, Crawford County, Pennsylvania, appropriating specific sums estimated to be required for the specific purposes of the city government, city of Titusville, hereinafter set forth during the year 2023, and for fixing the salaries of certain officers, and employees of the city of Titusville for and during the term for which they are respectively elected or chosen for appointment.
All right. Anybody like to have any discussion before we make a motion? I would just like to say once again that it's been a pleasure working with council, with Neil, with the department heads, with our financial supervisor to have a balanced budget. We had some raucous discussion at times. They were all public meetings. I think this year we had 7. Yeah. And here we are at our second reading, and we have a great budget there. Bill, anything? Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second that.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, we'll go to the roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Logston?
Yes.
Mr. Koval?
Yes.
Mr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes. Thank you. At this time, we'll have a presentation on our trail update.
Good evening, council, and thank you for having me. Let me just explain. Well, here's a handout. Black glove is not in support or anything else. I cut my finger and I figured rather than dripping here, I'd have it covered. I believe that electronic copy of my presentation was sent out. You may have read it or you may not have. I'm only going to hit the highlights of it. Kim Harris and I was here, I thought it was 2 years ago, it was about a year and a half ago on May 4th, and we talked about the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail. I do want to reiterate that I'm not an attorney, I'm not a professional planner, I'm just a trail advocate, and I started my own business to advance trails throughout Pennsylvania with some work in Western Virginia. And jumping ahead a little bit, I was hired by the Erie to Pittsburgh Trail Alliance through the Oil Region Alliance to work on getting some of the connections moving forward so we can have a trail all the way from Erie to Pittsburgh. There's a lot of work being done, and in part of my presentation I talked about millions of dollars that throughout Western Pennsylvania that have been awarded to trails, and we're making connections all the time. Locally, Corey has started to do some self-building and with volunteers. They started out with just 800 feet, and now they're doing more and more. Clear Lake Authority, that owns 27 miles of a trail corridor, they built 3.2 miles in 30 years. The last 2 years we built almost 3 miles. So there's starting to be a lot more excitement for the East Branch Trail and connecting from Hightown to Spartansburg and from Spartansburg to Corinth. There's over $1 million of work that's going to be done in the next 2 years on the East Branch Trail. There's a bridge that's going to be rehabbed, and there's more trail that's going to be put down. For those that aren't familiar with Hightown, we did do almost 2.5 miles of trail going north out of Hightown to the county forest, and we did that mostly with volunteers. And that's what I really tried to do with projects, especially projects and connections that have been not moving or moving at the glacier speed to try to get them going more. What I like to do with volunteers is public input, and They're showing that. They're putting in their time and their effort. The other thing is with volunteers, that with certain grants, their work can be used for match dollars. So every hour that they put in is $25 that can be used with some of the matches. I've been able to use volunteers, their match, to rehabilitate tunnels and bridges, and several $1 million of funding that began with just the volunteers. So you have a map there in front of you, and I've read a lot of different studies on different routes of connecting through Titusville, and it's becoming more and more important as Oil Creek State Park is going to expand their trail in the near future. We're going to extend from Hightown, so that sort of leaves in Titusville and Titusville to Hightown the connection we need to make. And as I said, I've read a lot of studies. A lot of the studies seem to be attacking the hardest part first. And I believe in going towards the simpler parts of things first and get volunteers involved and get some excitement for the trail. So what I looked at and what I thought made a lot of sense was what you have on your map there. Can we connect from Kern Mill Road to Garden Street? And that would go along the northern edge of O'Rourke Park. And the triangle on the right-hand side, that is probably railroad property. They weren't necessarily aware that they owned it through the years of not using it. But I went back through the deeds, and it's something it's not a right-of-way. It's something that the railroad purchased outright. So this is a project, and it's somewhat right in the middle of the connection, so that it can make connections to O'Rourkeville, which I think is a destination area. To the left, past Kerr Mill Road, is Walmart, and a connection can be made eventually to that. But I think this first 1,956 miles of connection can be done in the near future. And I think we can look at not only the land trail, but also the water trail to make improvements. And if we're bringing people to O'Rourkeville, then we can look at everything. But you know, I don't want to muddy the waters too much. I think we can start with a project that goes from Kerr Mill Road to Garden Street, but it's going to take an agreement with a railroad. And for certain grants, there has to be some kind of ownership or management to be able to apply for funding. So Neil and I met with Mr. Digman and Miss Porter, and they seemed like they were in agreement. Mr. Dingman also brought up, well, this is an inactive part of it, and maybe that can be more easily conveyed over since they're not using it now, but they want to be able to perhaps use it sometime in the future, and I think that can be worked out. But I think while we do this inactive corridor and have some kind of agreement so it can be used, we can also talk to the railroad to see what can we do on the active part of the railroad with the rail to trail. And I really think this is a problem that we've had because it's a high cost item. So instead of attacking that first, let's show the different funders that we're doing something and we're making connections with the city. And you know, it can keep growing out from Garden Street, that there may be an unused Baker Street that can be used, or other connections that can be made to more city streets. But to connect it eventually to the Queen City Trail, I think is doable. We can think out of the box. How can we limit what we're going to do with along the active railroad? And part of what Mr. Dingman said, he would like to move the tracks, what he's using for a main line, move it northward and allow that main line, just move it to the next track that's 20 feet over or so. But allow that first area in the south to be used as a railroad trail. So I think we have a lot of these opportunities, but it's going to take a lot of cooperation, not only with the city, but with Oil Creek Township. And there's still how to figure out how to get the whole way up to Hightown. But this focuses, if we focus on O'Rourke Field, working towards the Queen City Trail, I think it gives us more of a focus to work on and more on with the railroad to work on. And I can work with others and whoever wants to be involved to go towards Hightown. But these can be two separate projects that are going on at the same time instead of trying to solve the whole problem at one time.
So have you already spoken with Oil Creek Township on their part of this?
I spoke to them, it was probably about a year and a half ago also. So it's, who do I go to first? Because much of this
Yes.
project is in Oil Creek Township. And the boundary there, that boundary on the, where it's
The green.
red, that's a border between Titusville and Oil Creek Township. So it's sort of the chicken or the egg that I plan to go to them in January and give them the updates much the same way so we can all be involved.
So not the entire red area is railroad, just that end triangle.
Yeah, well, what I'm looking at is the green part would be the trail. The whole red part may be conveyed over by the railroad because it's an inactive.
That's what I'm asking. Is from the left of this map to the right of the map, is anything in red, that is the railroad?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a railroad. We're not
Okay.
taking anyone else's property.
Good.
We're just trying to work with a railroad. And one of the reasons a railroad would be willing to go with us and not charge an arm and a leg, and hopefully just for the consideration of $1, having it as a railroad use, because trails are considered a railroad use to be able to use until time that the railroad needs it back. So from every point of the inactive, or where the active line ends and going into Oil Creek, I'm not really sure how far they own, but I'd look at trying to convey that all at one time so you have the opportunity to be able to expand the trail. So what other questions? I have a tendency to go on and on and on.
Can we start tomorrow?
Yes. What time?
How you get coming down from Spartansburg, how you gonna get into Hightown into Titusville?
I don't know. We're already in Hightown.
Yeah.
We're by Hawks. The trail, we have the trail finished from Hawks the whole way up to Rosenberg Road. It goes across Mystic Park Road, and it ends where you can hear the shooting at the Sportsman Club.
I think one of my questions is how you gonna get from there into Titusville?
Well, I think that's a question that, I look at this with O'Rourke Field, that we can connect this to the Queen City Trail somewhere.
Yes.
And it's gonna be usable, and it's gonna be successful. And that may precipitate some kind of conversation with being able to go along Route 8 or along the creek or somewhere along the way. But that's sort of a problem we can solve, but still what we're doing from the O'Rourke Field or Walmart or Kerr Mill Road, that's a doable project. It's gonna get people through the city that they can go to there, and if they go to Kerr Mill Road, they can go to the end of Kerr Mill Road and come back. So they have the opportunity to go on low volume roads and trails. And I think something like that, I'm not here to solve the whole problem at one time, but I really think that a project like this, if we get started, then that's going to precipitate that those talks can become more earnest. And probably one of the things to do is to say what the trail needs and what are the needs of the other people. There's not a railroad that goes through there that they own right now. Clear Lake Authority does own Partway, between Hightown and Titusville. But I think that's a conversation to see, well, what are the needs of others, and try to come to some kind of agreement on the needs of everyone.
So what do you need from us tonight?
Well, I'm hoping that you'll remain supportive, but there's also different grants that are available. But before we can do that, I think we need some kind of agreement with the railroad. So what I would like to do is to be able to continue talking with the railroad, with Neil and with others, if the city's willing to become the manager of the corridor, or perhaps the owner. I don't know exactly how it would be, but it's not something we're going to negotiate and say, this is what you
Yes.
have to do. We're going to be giving you feedback all the time and saying, what are you comfortable with? Because in my outline, I said, well, there are, even if you have volunteers that are taking care of the trail and helping you with the trail, well, how are the volunteers insured? How are they trained? And that's, I've done some training of volunteers, and there's opportunities out there in the very near future to be able to work to get some training for volunteers. So I think that's an opportunity where we may be able to go forward, to look at training for volunteers if we come to an agreement, but look first, and it's both the...
Does not, historically and statistically, us being supportive in getting the trail through the city is great for our economic development. And, you know, it helps Airbnbs, and a lot of people that ride the trails end up stopping at restaurants and pubs and different things in the town. I think that we're missing a lot for this not already being done, and so we can only really do our part.
Yeah. And I think this is the opportunity, is we're looking to make the connections, not only what are the connections of the Erie to Pittsburgh, but how do we tie into the restaurants and other establishments.
Anybody else have thoughts or questions for him? Thank you for the presentation. And then collectively, would we say we're in support of this? Do we keep talking? 100%?
Yep, I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I do plan to come back, not on January 3rd,
Okay.
but the following one, and to just provide an update, and where I can look more for opportunities as we go forward.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And you want us to bring our checkbook? Thank you.
Maybe.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to new business tonight. Is resolution number 13, 2022, is amending certain employee policies. If you just want to, kind of, we'll go over each one and hit us with the changes or highlights.
Yep, sure will. So I'll just go over, this is a resolution of the City Council for the City of Titusville updating certain policies for implementation into a comprehensive employee handbook. Council, you should have in front of you 4 updated policies. The first, the Employee Safety Policy Manual. Basically, all we did with that was revise the Safety Committee section. In that was adopted back in 2013. So we have started active Safety Committee meetings we've done for the past year or so. So we need to make some updates. So that's the only change with the Employee Safety Policy Manual. Next, the Employee Motor Vehicle Review Policy. We updated that. That was adopted back in 2013. We revised that to update that once every 3 years, a non-CDL driver, unless there's an accident or incident, would have to be go through
Review.
for review.
Okay.
We just changed that from once every 3 years unless there's an accident. Hazard inspection manual, that was adopted back in 2013. We added the airport into the hazard inspection manual. It was not in there. We took the swimming pool that actually, believe it or not, was in there.
Okay.
We took that out and changed it to splash pad. And lastly, the employee dress code. We never had a employee dress code for City Hall. Certainly, we tell folks when they work at City Hall, they usually ask what do you wear. We told them obviously you dress professional and you look presentable. So we officially have a dress code that we're able to share. So putting these in place, our policy book didn't really happen, everything was just kind of in its own area. So by doing this, we want to develop a manual, so we're able to give it to new employees when they get hired. And again, the simple dress code was one, we never had a policy, so we decided to develop one.
Okay.
And add to it. So I'm asking for your approval on resolution number 13, for the implementation into a comprehensive employee handbook by updating these policies.
Any clarifying questions, or would somebody like to make a resolution? Make a motion, sorry.
I'll make a motion to accept this resolution.
Okay. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion at all? Everybody's had a chance to read it? All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Logston?
Yes.
Mr. Koval?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes. At this time, we will open it up for public input. Again, state whether you're resident, non-resident, or your connection to the city, 5-minute time limit per individual speaker. And don't everybody jump at once. So welcome input.
If I may quickly add, I'm a
Please.
non-resident. I do live in Catania, but the trail goes half a block away. One thing I forgot to mention was I am staying overnight at the Quality Inn. If anyone wants to see part of our work field tomorrow, why I can arrange my schedule so it can be done. Or sometime in the future, what I can do is let Neil know whenever I'm going forward or going to Spartansburg or somewhere, and if someone wants to meet me with the weather okay, why, we can always arrange for that. Thank
I
you.
like that, thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll start with our junior council tonight. You go first.
I think the trail is a good idea. Keep building on it. Because we are trail heavy, like towards town, with the oil industry, all that stuff around here. So I think that's good. I don't really have much to say on any of these
Okay.
topics.
I agree with Chloe's words, and I don't really have any other comments.
All right, we'll start with Chad tonight.
I don't have a lot to say, but you know, the holidays are coming upon us here in the next couple of weeks, Christmas time, so, you know, wishing everybody a good holiday season and, be safe. Enjoy with friends and family. See you guys back at the January 3rd.
Bill?
I would just like to say, have everybody out there have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Also, I'd like to say a little bit about the new ambulance that we're going to take on board in the first of the year. I mean, this is going to be, it's going to be a project, I do believe. And I'm sorry to see Joe getting out of it, on that aspect of it. But there's different things that we got to take into consideration with Joe. And I really appreciate all his time and effort he's put in to the Titusville Police Bureau, Fire Department. It's been outstanding. And I'd like to say thank you to the rest of the council for their diligence on the budget and everything else. I know different times, some of us take some hits. Right, Tom? Sam. But anyhow, that's why we get the big bucks. That's why we make the big bucks here in the council, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But once again, thank everybody in Titusville for their patience on everything, especially the garbage service and everything else. It's been a rough year, and there's some new things coming up that we're really excited about. And I think everybody should look forward to the ambulance service coming in that we're going to put into play. Thank you.
Sam?
I just want to reflect on the year of this council. It's been a year, and I have to say that we'll be getting some arguments, we'll get some fights, but knowing inside each and every one of these fellow council members always have the city's interests first. We may have disagreement, we all want to get to this point. We may have disagreements on which road that we take to get there. But as a body, this group is dedicated to this town's success. And it was just a pleasure being with you folks this year.
Thank you. Deputy?
I'm just going to reiterate the same thing about the holidays, but also as we get closer to the holidays, remind everybody again to shop local. We have a lot of small business here that we wanted to patronize, not only at the holiday, but moving forward from that as well. And to have safe holidays, most definitely. Also want to just thank Public Works for what they do as the weather changes, and they'll be starting after the holidays their schedule for winter. And so, they do a nice job keeping our streets clear and safe for us. And also, as people are looking for events to do over the holidays, the community calendar, tap into Titusville to look at the events, but also some of the volunteer things that are going on, like to Burgess, and things that we have a lot of things going on if you take the time to look around it at local events. That's
Okay.
it for me today.
For me, it's been an interesting year, very interesting. I will stay on par here and disagree with Councilman Sam by saying that I don't see them as fights, I see them as raucous debate, which is a good thing, and I know that's what he means, but I'm trying to be humorous, but we have had some times where maybe only one person disagrees, and we've actually changed course because one person felt strong enough about something. And I think that's great because it means that we're as a body, but we encourage individuality. Even we like to take input, and we even did a sidewalk thing this year because one of our previous junior council spearheaded that and really worked on that. I would like to speak for a second on the garbage issue because we put a letter on our Facebook page today, just reminding folks of what the code says. The letter that came out today, people that are listening or people that will listen to this later or in the newspaper, the letter that came out today is not something new. It's just reiterating when we put out bags of garbage, the code has always been you don't put them out before 5 p.m. the day before because, as everybody knows, we have critters, domestic cats and feral cats and raccoons and stuff that roam around, and it was so the people didn't put out their garbage 3 days ahead of time, and for everybody's sake. So that's not something new. As Neil said, he and I have had numerous conversations that we're going to talk to Tri-County after the first year to try to do something better for the downtown commercial district with the people that are trying to figure out what to do with the cans. But all in all, I reminded somebody on the way in here that called me as I was walking in the door that some of our communities around us are still hauling their garbage to roll-offs at either end of the city. You pick your choice where you want to take it. So I'm glad we solved that problem. But just like a lot of things we've dealt with this year, anytime there's change, there comes hiccups here and there. The park, the bridge, whatever. But we're trying to look to the future and to solve each one of those. To build on what Sarah said about shopping local, I would encourage people to eat local when you can, to drink local when you can, and to worship local, because there's a lot of activities going on at different churches, and like Sarah already mentioned, Lights at Burgess Park is beautiful. So when you get a chance to get out and do that, everybody have a safe Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody again come January 3rd. And if somebody would like to make a motion to adjourn, we have a short executive session afterwards.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All right, before we call the roll, I would like to say that one thing I forgot, and it is really good to work with all these people up here, and I appreciate each one of them and what they add to us. Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Koval?
Yes.
Mr. McCrillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Longston?
Yes.
Mr. Crouch?
Yes. I'll take a 5-minute recess in case anyone wants to take
Somebody